We are joined now by former women's champion, former Sports Illustrated cover star, and new Boxing Hall of Famer, the coal miner's daughter, Christy Martin. Christy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's a great honor to be here.
And congratulations on your Hall of Fame induction as part of the first class of the modern female fighters going in. Were you expecting, when you saw, I'm sure you were aware of some of the names on the list, were you kind of expecting that, you know what, I might be one of the two that's getting the call, or were you caught off guard when you got the call from Ed Brophy?
Well, I definitely was hoping, but you know, as you go through the list and you see the names, you're like, oh my, and you know that there were a lot of, especially male media members that weren't so happy about Christy Martin back in the 90s because they weren't really supportive of women's boxing. So you just didn't know. I mean, which way is it going to go? Will I get the call? Will I not? But when I got the call, of course, I was very excited.
When you think about everything that you had to do, the extent to which you were a real pioneer, I mean, you were on Don King Showtime pay-per-views, for heaven's sake. Well, how does it make you feel now to look at, say, Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano selling out Madison Square Garden and knowing that you played a role in helping that to happen?
I hope I did play a role in helping that be easier for them. But I'm so proud of both those fighters. And I was fortunate enough to be in the Garden that night. And I'm so glad I was there because to feel the emotion and the excitement, they not only sold out the Garden, but they left everybody standing on their feet. Yeah. And I said over and over, everybody that left the Garden or turned off their TV that night, they didn't say anything about that being a woman's fight.
Right.
They said that was one hell of a fight.
Yeah. Right.
And it didn't matter if it were two women or two men or two dogs. It was a great fight.
Yeah.
Do you feel like your career you've sort of gotten more respect retroactively because of, as you said, at the time in the 90s, people were like, oh, Christy Martin, women's boxing, it's a sideshow, whatever. Because of the way that the female side of the game has progressed, do people treat what you did with more respect now, you feel, than maybe was the case back then?
I think so, yes. You know, I think we get a little more, or I get a little more notoriety because of all those hard doors I helped knock down back in the 90s. And of course, Don King gave me a great platform, a great opportunity that no other promoter was willing to give a female fighter at the time. And then Showtime put me on regular Showtime pay-per-view, and I was, you know, for a minute I was a staple with Showtime. So it was pretty cool, and my career was a great career. I'm very proud of.
One of the things that very few of us realized at the time was not just what you had to go through to get in the ring and get attention, but what was going on in your life, what had gone on in your life beforehand, what continued to go on in the life, the immense struggles that you had to deal with. You've now been documenting them. You've got a book coming out, there's a documentary, and I'm wondering how hard it was for you to get to a place where you felt comfortable sharing that kind of information.
Well, first of all, it was like the boxing ring was home to me and where I was safe, and that's where I could let out frustration. Right. I could be aggressive. I could be sometimes an ass. But it was okay because it was in the boxing ring. So I loved my job and I felt most at home in the boxing ring. But it was a struggle. It was hard because to keep my private life private and everything looked so positive in the public and in front of the cameras. Like I would often say, it seemed like I was on top of the world, but really the world was on top of me. And I just got so low in my life that I didn't care. Jim had threatened to kill me for 20 years if ever I left him, and it just got to that point where I didn't care anymore. Right. My career was over. I didn't have to save boxing because it was really done. Right. And honestly, I didn't care to save me. So I just decided now's the time, I'm leaving, and that was the time he tried to kill me, as he said he would.
Right. How hard was it to sort of recover from that, find your strength again, find your own agency and get away from that? Once you had left him, was there a period where it was still really hard, or was that the start of a kind of liberation for you?
It definitely was the birth of a new person, but the problem with that new person being born, that I have all these years of Jim Martin's voice in my head telling me that I wasn't good enough and I wasn't, no one liked me. And the boxing fans hated me. My family hated me. He had me convinced that I truly was alone in this world. And so I still hear his voice from time to time. And I don't know, even with this weekend, like how awesome it is, there's part of me that hears him saying I don't deserve it. So it's still an everyday struggle. And that's what I feel like God left me here to help other people. And if by sharing my story I can help someone else, that's great. I'm doing my job, and I may or may not be able to help me get back, 100% on my feet. But if I can help someone else, then I'm good with that, and I feel like I've done what God left me here to do.
So I watched the documentary, and I knew the broad strokes of your story pretty well. I wasn't prepared for just how emotionally powerful it was going to be, and not just the darkness, but the beautiful story of you finding Lisa, that it was a former opponent, and then you found love after careers were over, and the emotional spectrum is really covered in the documentary. What's the reaction been like since it came out in terms of just like people coming up to you and being inspired by all different aspects of your story?
It's been overwhelming. I mean, when I say from around the world, I literally mean from around the world. I've gotten messages. And what has touched me the most is the messages from the men. And the men are saying, thank you so much for sharing your story because you helped my daughter. You helped, and maybe it was a way that the fathers, it gave them a leeway into talking to about whether it be domestic violence, sexuality, just being the underdog, be what you want to. My dad always told me, you can be the president of the United States if you want to be. You be anything you want. Nothing can hold you down. And so I guess I just, in some ways, lived by that. But I was, so torn because one side of me wants to be positive, and then Jim Martin was so overwhelmingly beating me down and just tearing me down each and every time something positive happened in my life.
Was it tough to watch back the documentary, seeing Jim interviewed in there and having him weighing in on all these things that happened?
Yes, and to be very honest, I thought maybe he'll show some remorse. Maybe he'll have something, he'll say something that I'll feel like he's sorry. And it was just the opposite.
Right.
I mean, he just showed the arrogant ass that he is, and I'm pretty sure he didn't win over any fans, and he really showed the true him. And I want to watch the documentary. I watched it once by myself, and I watched it once with Lisa. And I would like to sit and watch it again, but I really just hate to hear his voice.
Understandable.
So it's tough.
Yeah.
But there's so many good things. I mean,
Yes.
all those Don King days and the Mike Tyson stuff. It's some really good stuff that's in that documentary. So it's not all bad.
And particularly the Deidre Gogarty fight on Showtime that opened the door for everything that followed. Do you ever catch yourself thinking about if that hadn't played out the way it did, the whole story is completely different?
Absolutely. I mean, if Gogarty wasn't so tough as nails, and had she, I think I knocked her down in the second round. She got right back up and just fought like hell. Probably if I hadn't bled everywhere, there were so many things that if this had happened, probably the career wouldn't have been what it was. So it just took every little piece to make it successful and to lead us here this weekend.
It must seem, looking back on it, almost like a whirlwind, not only because of the sudden fame, the kind of attention that no female fighter had to that point, all of those elements that must have been great and positive, and yet also there's all this negative stuff going on in the background. Looking back on it all must be just a strange whirl of emotions and feelings.
It is, and different times people have asked me, would I do anything different? What would would I change something? Would I not do the career? And because my personal life and my private life were so intertwined, how can I say I wouldn't have done one without the other? Because I couldn't have done one without the other.
Right.
so even preparing for this weekend, and in the speaking and speech and everything, I felt Jim, and it was tight, and I called my buddy Ron Borges, and I'm like, Ron, help me, because I need to know, how do I handle this? What do I say? What do I not say? I feel like people are expecting me to say something about him, but what do I say? And so we have a plan.
Okay.
We have a plan.
That's a nice tease.
We have a plan.
Okay. I hope you really get the opportunity, when you're here, like boxing fans, as you well know, are amazing and really dedicated, especially the people who come here. I hope you're able to feel over these next couple of days that it is a love from boxing fans, and it's a really genuine love that you've earned with your work over the years. And I hope you get to feel that this week.
I think that, as much as Jim had beaten into my brain that the boxing fans didn't love me, and that especially if they found out that I was gay, that they would all turn on me, it has been, at least to my face, it has been just the opposite. And there's no, and we're getting older, things are different now than they were 20 years ago. Yeah. But there's no one that has any hesitation of still giving me a hug, telling me they love me, telling me that they're so happy for this weekend, and usually they're like, "Where's Lisa?" So it's not like nice. There's just no hesitation, and it seems like I've had full acceptance.
Good.
Great. And finally, anyone watching the video can see you're wearing the Christy Martin Promotions logo on your shirt. Yes. How do you like being on the promotional side of the business?
I absolutely do not. I mean, it is so hard. It was so much fun being a fighter. I loved it. I loved my job. I absolutely loved being in fights. But as a promoter, you have to deal with all those personalities, and it's different. I mean, these guys today, guys and women, it's about social media, about how many likes they have, about how many people are following them, all that. No, go to the gym and learn how to fight. And then they don't want to take fights against other good fighters. Right. They want to take guarantees. And I'm like, look, if you want a guarantee, you have to go to Sears, because I don't give guarantees. I'm a promoter, not a protector. Right. You have to fight on my shows. I put my own guys in fights, so I'm not going to take care of somebody else's fighters. It's hard. And I just don't know how much longer I can hang in there with the promotion thing.
All right, so you're not predicting that you'll be inducted a second time to the Hall of Fame as a promoter necessarily, but getting in once as a fighter is pretty darn good and well-deserved, and congratulations, and thanks for taking a little time to talk to us.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.